The quiet of the night still wrapped around the small bedroom, but the mood had shifted. Michael stood by the window, staring out at the peaceful street bathed in the soft glow of the street lamps. The cool night air slipped through the slightly open window, brushing against his face like a whisper from the past. Inside, Jake sat quietly on the bed, his mind full of new feelings but still searching for answers. Michael took a slow breath, feeling the weight of a memory he hadn't shared in years, a story of his own first love. The hope and heartbreak that had shaped him in ways he hadn't realized until now. He turned from the window and looked back at his son, whose eyes met his with a mix of curiosity and trust. "You know, Jake," Michael began softly, "I met someone once, someone who changed everything for me." Jake's eyes widened slightly, and he shifted closer, leaning in with a newfound interest. "Really? What happened?" Michael smiled faintly, the past coming alive in his mind like an old film. "This was a long time ago, when I was your age. I was scared to tell her how I felt. I didn't want to risk losing her as a friend, so I kept everything inside." Jake nodded slowly, as if he could already feel the weight of that fear. "I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe the way things would never change. But in trying to protect myself, I ended up losing something that could have been beautiful." Michael's voice softened, touched by a bittersweet ache. "She was kind, smart, and I was completely drawn to her. But I was too afraid to be honest." Jake's brow furrowed, sensing the pain in his father's story. "What happened to her?" Michael looked away for a moment, staring out the window again. "We drifted apart. We stopped talking, and I always wondered if I had missed my chance." Turned back to Jake, his eyes full of quiet hope. "But that experience taught me something important, that sometimes the heart knows things before the mind can understand them. It takes courage to be honest with your feelings, even if it's scary." Jake absorbed the words, his own worries seeming a little lighter in the face of his father's story. "Do you think she ever felt the same way?" Jake asked quietly. Michael smiled softly. "I don't know, maybe she did. Or maybe she didn't. What matters is that I learned to be brave enough to let someone know how I felt, even if I wasn't sure of the answer." Jake looked down for a moment, then back up with a flicker of determination. "I want to be brave like that, but it's hard." Michael nodded in understanding. "I know it is. But bravery isn't about not being afraid, it's about feeling the fear and doing it anyway." They sat together in the quiet room, the soft hum of the night filling the space between them. "You're growing into someone who feels deeply, Jake," Michael said gently. "That's a gift, even if it feels overwhelming right now." Jake smiled faintly, mixture of relief and hope blooming in his chest. Michael reached out and gave his son's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "And you don't have to do this alone. I'm here for you always." Jake looked up, his eyes bright with trust in something new, a quiet strength that had begun to take root. "Thanks, Dad," Jake said softly. "I think I'm starting to understand." Michael's heart swelled with pride. He saw in Jake a reflection of himself, vulnerable yet brave, scared yet hopeful. As the night wore on, the bond between them grew stronger, not just as father and son, but as to hearts learning about love and courage together. Michael sat back down on the bed beside Jake, feeling a peaceful calm settle over him. The night had brought more than just a conversation. It opened a door to understanding, healing, and the quiet promise of new beginnings. Outside, the first hints of dawn began to color the sky. And Michael knew that whatever tomorrow would bring, they would face it side by side, because sometimes the most important lessons about love come not from grand gestures, but from quiet moments like this, when a heart understands another heart, and the courage to be honest begins to grow. The first light of dawn gently slipped through the curtains, casting a warm golden hue across the room. The night had given way to a soft morning, the kind that promises new beginnings even when the past feels heavy. Michael lay awake, listening to the quiet rhythm of the house stirring to life, the distant hum of a car starting, the faint chirping of birds outside the window, the gentle creaks as the old house stretched and settled. Across the room, Jake was already up, standing by the door with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there the night before. His face was calm, but there was a spark in his eyes, a quiet determination that told Michael everything he needed to know. "Morning, Dad," Jake said softly, his voice steady but warm. Michael smiled, sitting up slowly. "Good morning, Jake. How are you feeling?" Jake glanced away for a moment, then back with a small smile. "Better. Thanks for staying up with me." Michael reached out and ruffled his son's hair affectionately. "You're growing up fast. I'm proud of you." Jake looked back at his dad with gratitude shining in his eyes. "I think I know what I have to do now." Michael's heart swelled. "Tell Emma how you feel." Jake nodded. "Yeah, I'm still scared, but I don't want to wonder what if forever." Michael stood and walked over to the window, pulling back the curtain to let in more sunlight. The world outside was waking up, just like Jake's heart was starting, too. "It's not easy," Michael said quietly, "but sometimes the hardest things are the most important." Jake took a deep breath and smiled. "I think I'm ready." Michael turned to his son and saw the reflection of his own youth in Jake's eyes, the same mix of hope and fear, longing and bravery. "Remember," Michael said gently, "you don't have to rush anything. Just be honest, and whatever happens, you'll learn and grow." Jake nodded, the weight of uncertainty lifting just a little. "Thanks, Dad, for everything." Michael felt a quiet pride that was hard to put into words. He had always wanted to be there for Jake. But this night had reminded him how much they could teach each other about love, courage, and the beauty of being vulnerable. As Jake left the room, Michael watched him go with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. The boy who had come to him in the middle of the night, searching for answers, was now stepping into the day with a new sense of purpose. Michael returned to the bed and lay back down, feeling a gentle peace settle over him. The night had been more than just an interruption to sleep, had been a turning point. He thought about his own story, the love he had lost and the lessons he had learned. Maybe, just maybe, Jake's journey would be different. Maybe Jake would find the kind of love that stayed, that grew, that healed the heart instead of breaking it. The morning light filled the room and Michael closed his eyes, imagining all the possibilities that lay ahead for his son and for himself in that quiet moment. He understood something new. Love wasn't just about romance or passion. It was about connection, courage, and the willingness to open your heart, no matter how scary it might be. And sometimes, the greatest love stories begin in the most unexpected moments, like when a teenage son wakes his father in the middle of the night, searching for understanding, and together they find a little hope to carry into the future. The house was silent except for the soft ticking of the old clock on the bedside table. Outside, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tall oak tree, casting soft shadows across the living room window. Inside the small bedroom, Michael lay in bed, drifting slowly into sleep after a long day of work. The warmth of the blankets wrapped around him, the familiar creak of the house settling, and the dim glow of the nightlight beside his bed all gave a quiet comfort. He had always cherished these rare moments of peace, the kind where the world seemed to pause just for a little while. But tonight, that peace was about to break. Suddenly, a soft knocking on the bedroom door stirred Michael from his rest. At first he thought it was a dream, a fragment of some restless imagination. But then he heard it again, a timid, hesitant sound. "Dad." The voice was barely a whisper, but it pulled Michael fully awake. His heart quickened in surprise. It was Jake, his teenage son, standing quietly by the doorway. Michael blinked, trying to adjust his eyes to the dim light. Jake looked different. Somehow smaller, more vulnerable, with a nervous energy that Michael didn't usually see. His son's usually confident posture was replaced by a shy, uncertain stance. "What is it, Jake?" Michael asked gently, sitting up in bed. Jake hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. "Can I sit with you for a minute?" Michael nodded and patted the empty space beside him on the bed. Jake climbed up and sat down, his legs folded awkwardly beneath him. They sat together in silence for a moment, the quiet of the night pressing in around them. Outside, the wind sighed through the trees, and the distant hum of a car driving by was the only other sound. Michael watched his son's face in the dim light. There was something behind Jake's eyes, a mixture of confusion, fear, and hope that made Michael's chest tighten. "Is everything okay?" Michael asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Jake swallowed hard. I don't know." Michael reached out and rested a hand on Jake's shoulder. "You can tell me anything, Jake. You know that, right?" Jake nodded, but didn't speak. Instead, he looked down at his hands, twisting them nervously. For a long moment, the two of them just sat there, father and son, in the quiet night, sharing a silence that felt heavier than words. Michael thought about all the times Jake had come to him with questions or problems before. Usually, it was about school or friends or sports. But this felt different. "What's on your mind, son?" Michael asked softly. Jake took a deep breath and finally looked up. "It's hard to explain." Michael gave a small, encouraging smile. "Try me." Jake hesitated again, searching for the right words. "It's like I feel something I don't understand, something I'm scared to say out loud." Michael's heart softened. He remembered those moments from his own youth, the confusing, powerful feelings that seemed to arrive without warning, leaving everything else in the world blurry and uncertain. "I know that feeling," Michael said quietly. "It can be scary, but it's also ... real." Jake's eyes glistened in the nightlight. "How did you know what to do?" Michael thought about it. "Sometimes you don't know. You just have to listen to your heart, even if it's scary. Even if you're not sure what will happen." Jake nodded slowly, absorbing his father's words. The silence stretched again between them, but this time it was gentler, filled with understanding. Instead of worry, Michael looked at his son and felt a surge of protectiveness mixed with pride. Jake was growing up. These were the moments that mattered, the moments when he needed to know he wasn't alone. "Thank you for waking me up," Michael said softly. Jake smiled faintly. "I didn't know who else to talk to." Michael pulled him into a brief, careful hug. "You'll always have me, Jake, no matter what." And as the night deepened, father and son sat together, their bond quietly strengthened by the truth shared in the dark, a moment that would ripple through their lives in ways neither of them yet understood. Outside, the world kept turning, but inside that small room, a new understanding had begun to grow. The night seemed to stretch longer than usual as Michael and Jake sat side by side in the quiet room. Outside, the streetlights cast a faint golden glow through the curtains, softening the edges of the world. Inside, the air felt thick with unspoken words, as if something important was waiting to be revealed. Jake's fingers trembled slightly as he clutched the edge of his blanket. His mind raced with thoughts he barely understood himself, feelings he was afraid to name aloud. Michael noticed his son's nervousness and gave him a reassuring smile. "Take your time, Jake. You don't have to say anything until you're ready." But Jake took a deep breath, as if steeling himself, and finally began. "There's this girl at school, Emma." Michael nodded quietly, encouraging him to continue without pressure. Jake's voice softened, and for the first time, Michael saw something fragile and hopeful in his son's eyes. "She's different. She's kind, funny, and she makes me laugh in a way no one else does." Michael felt warmth spreading in his chest. The way Jake spoke wasn't just about friendship. There was something deeper, something tender that stirred memories of his own youth. "I think I like her," Jake admitted, almost shyly. "But it's more than that. I think I really like her." Michael reached out and rested a hand gently on Jake's shoulder. "That's natural, son. It's a good feeling to like someone." Jake looked down at his hands again, twisting the blanket between his fingers. But I don't know if she feels the same way. I don't even know if she notices me. Michael's heart ached a little for his son's uncertainty. He remembered how confusing and frightening those early feelings of attraction could be full of hope but also so fragile. Have you told her how you feel? Michael asked softly. Jake shook his head. No, I'm scared. What if she laughs? Or worse, what if she doesn't care? Michael nodded thoughtfully. It's okay to be scared. It means you care. But sometimes, if you don't take the chance, you'll never know what could have been. Jake looked up, his eyes searching his father's face for advice, for courage. Michael smiled gently, remembering the times when he had felt just as lost. When I was your age, I felt the same way about someone. I was afraid to say anything, worried it would change everything. Jake's curiosity was piqued. What happened? Michael sighed softly, the memories coming back with bittersweet clarity. I kept my feelings to myself for too long. I thought if I stayed quiet, things would stay the same. But sometimes silence can hurt more than words. Jake listened intently, the honesty in his father's voice breaking through the night stillness. I wish I had been braver, Michael continued. But I learned that when you care about someone, it's worth the risk. Jake nodded slowly, feeling a mixture of hope and fear swirl inside him. Michael's eyes softened. You're growing up, Jake. These feelings are part of that. And while it might feel confusing now, it's also a chance to discover something beautiful. Jake smiled faintly, the tension in his shoulders easing a little. For a moment, the two of them sat in silence again, quiet, filled with understanding and unspoken love. I want to tell Emma how I feel, Jake finally said, but I don't know if I'm ready. Michael squeezed his shoulder gently. You'll know when the time is right. Just remember, being honest with yourself is the first step. Jake looked up at his dad, a flicker of determination shining through his uncertainty. Thanks, Dad. I'm glad I woke you up tonight. Michael smiled warmly. Me too, son. Sometimes, the most important conversations happen when the world is asleep. Outside, the night deepened, carrying with it the quiet promise of tomorrow. Inside, father and son shared a moment of connection, a gentle reminder that love, in all its forms, was a journey they were beginning together. As Jake settled back into bed, Michael lay awake a little longer, thinking about how these small moments of honesty could change everything. The night had started with uncertainty and fear, but now it was filled with hope that one day Jake would find the kind of love that made the heart both ache and soar. And Michael, watching his son grow, felt a quiet pride in the boy who was learning to open his heart to the world.